I'm your host, Mike Rogers. Tonight, we will be kicking off the Canadian Mental Health Association of New Brunswick's 70th Mental Health Week with our Mental Health Speaker Series. Over this week, we will have 7 mental health advocates sharing their journey with us. We hope in presenting this series, we can offer you insight to know that you are not alone in your journey, and that you'll find hope and understanding that recovery and resiliency are indeed possible. And if you happen to be experiencing any mental health issues, please reach out to one of the numbers that we'll be sharing in the chat. During this presentation, if you have any questions, please contribute them. You can do that just by clicking on the Q&A portion at the bottom of your screen and just typing it out to us. We'll be answering it at the end of the session. Now let's get to know our first speaker, shall we? Mitchell Goodine was born in Tilley, New Brunswick, and moved to Fredericton to attend university. He soon discovered the road of mental health, wellness, and the role that it had in store for him. Advocating through performances and public speaking, Mitchell highlights the importance of mental health through his personal experience with conversion therapy, suicide, emotional intensity disorder, self-care, and coping strategies. Thank you for joining us today, Mitchell.
Hi, thank you so much, Mike, for having me.
Well, without further ado, let's hop right into the presentation.
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Canadian Mental Health Association series, especially here with Mental Health Week. Starting it off, I am very honored and privileged to be able to be a part of this. As Mike alluded to briefly, and I will explain more, my mental health journey has had ups and downs, turnarounds, and bins that I never, ever could imagine. And as I'm sure many of you tuning in perhaps can relate, I hope that if some of these are triggering or potentially stirring of a lot of emotions, then please do not hesitate to look up those numbers within the chats, because resources are available. So without further ado, I'm going to take you on a little journey on who Mitchell Goodine is. Mitchell Goodine was unfortunately a young gay man in a Pentecostal small town, rural New Brunswick community. That right there in itself can kind of paint the picture to how mental health will definitely be challenged, definitely was put in its steps, and graciously and luckily, I was able to discover through means of resources and through individuals coming into my life that I was worth it, that I meant something, and that I indeed was going to be okay. And I'm so honored to share this experience with you, and that resiliency and recovery is possible. So during high school and middle school, I was extremely self-conscious, anxiety-ridden, and suicidal. On top of that, with the complex nature of a organized religious family and community, I very much struggled with bullying and with my own suicidal ideations and actions for the majority of my high school career. The individuals who most impacted me were guidance counselors who were able to listen, not being able to give as much support through the works of what they could do for me, other than just listening, which is what I needed at the time. I just needed someone to validate me. I needed somebody to listen, to hear my plea. So getting through one person after another, lunging into these positions of finding these 1 to 2 people that I could trust, that I could really open up to. It soon led into discovering that I needed to look elsewhere outside of my community, and I was given the opportunity by going to university. So flash forward into 2008, where I was able to go through an array of emotions: excited, elated, terrified. I was still closeted in my sexual orientation. I was not fully aware of the extent that the conversion therapy had on me at the time. A lot of it was pushed to the side. The problem with that is that it usually comes back. And it came back. Unfortunately, with a vengeance in my life. It crippled me to the point where I was unable to even know who I was, what I wanted to do, and even some days what I wanted to go for a walk, a drive, or even get out of bed, go to work if I could. There was a point where my schooling then suffered, and being within a health program, I knew the severity of that. And so I had to withdraw from the nursing program, and able to do so, I was then struggling at that point, realizing that I had gone through high school, the majority of my 7-year university career, to then still have this feeling that something wasn't okay. I knew it wasn't. I still was suffering with depression. I was struggling still with suicidal thoughts. I wasn't living my life. I was living a shell of what I was supposed to be. So after having, again, finding 1 to 2 people that I could really open up to, whether it was through resources, through the Canadian Mental Health Association, or through therapy, or through just a friend with a sympathetic ear, I was able to expand into finally taking that step and finding a health professional that was then able to evaluate and to open up some doors for me. Those emotional doors, unfortunately, were part of the experience that I'm sharing today. My conversion therapy was one of them. For those of you who may not understand that, it goes by many names: reparative therapy, but the most important one is the sexual orientation and gender identity changing efforts. It's when, unfortunately, through religious means, generally, one is coerced and manipulated and mentally convinced that they're not okay the way that they are, that there's something wrong with them. Through several rounds of this damaging therapy, destructive, belittling, humiliating, I grew to reserve myself into a secluded space of self-hatred, embarrassment, frustration. I took it out on a lot of people that I loved, the people around me. And I suffered for that, even more so. Not only have I gone through one of the most traumatic experiences I've ever faced in my 31 years of existence, I was then giving more power to this situation to destroy even more. When that set in, I couldn't take it. I wanted to scream. I could barely contain it, and I didn't. Through unfortunate self-destructive means of alcohol and drug abuse, I struggled extremely with finding my path, trying to numb that fear of looming doom, of I'm gonna have to face this. And I didn't know how, and I was petrified. But the fear became too much to live with, and I wanted to see it. I wanted to see it gone. So it was by just the strength of having the last piece of myself not willing to let any more power be taken from me, I stood up and I began to explore what that means to me and that experience. I began to explore what the effects that bullying truly had on me and what filters as an adult I was looking through and filtering my life, my actions, my values, my beliefs, my speech. Everything was filtered through this hate, through this self-hatred, through this pain. I could only imagine what purity and what enjoyment and excitement could have been there if it had not been filtered through that. So when I finally began to explore more about myself, I realized that there was a lot more to the just, obviously the one traumatic experience would have been enough. But unfortunately, going through other experiences, there was there was a time where I didn't know if I was going to make it to the next week for a long time. The conversion therapy and the bullying was some of the biggest, on top of one of the most traumatic experiences, as well as being used by a family member in an inappropriate manner. And I don't think I need to elaborate on it. These are real subjects that happen to real people. Our mental health state is so vulnerable then. It can be on any given day. But if you're going through something like that, the only thing that you can feel is sometimes the pain, the agony, the lack thereof. Again, that on top of another stone on my back, I just sunk down even more as a person, another filter to which I was now expressing through. Severe depression, anxiety, and emotional intensity disorder were some of the topics that were brought up during many of my consultations, and finally confirmed that that was indeed something that I need to explore more of. So what that meant for me was cognitive behavioral therapy and resources. I had to wait, but it was worth the wait. I was able to open up more and more each time about this experience without crumbling and without reserving even more of myself inward. It took a long time to get there, and it still is very difficult. But I find sharing my experiences allows me to open up myself a little bit more each time. I start to believe when I say it out loud, I start to believe it. I'm gonna be okay. What happened to me was not my fault. There's nothing about who I am and what I've been through ever needs to correlate. That is not to define me, but it is a part of me. It is a huge part of me. One that I will never be able to shake off. So when I realized that it was gonna be there, like a cluttered room, I needed to start to take open those mental boxes and filter through those emotions. By doing that, I focused a lot on reflective therapy, writing things down, journaling really helped me, because I found my mind was so erratic. I didn't know which thought wanted to come first. I didn't know which one was going to come out. And so I just started writing whatever I could think of. And then I looked at it after 20 minutes. I set a time frame. And after that, I reevaluated what stood out to me the most, or if there was any commonalities, any similarities to what I wrote. I started to see the filters more for what they were. I was born and bred into a highly religious community where my sexual orientation was not ever going to be accepted and is not accepted. So what did that mean for me as an individual? Some people are often in different situations and can never often have the same outcome. So although I made a decision to stay connected with boundaries to some of my family, that's not everyone's preference, and it's not maybe the best route for everyone. Toxic relationships, damaging connections are not worth keeping. I kept a lot just because I was alone. I was afraid, I was scared. I didn't know what this journey meant for me. Having new diagnostic analysis given to me, what did that mean now? Is that now who I am? It's a part of me, another piece of me, but it is not all of me. So I add that on. So now that I've been given these resources, now that I have the diagnosis, I could start to feel a little bit more in control, just a little bit more with direction. Because with so much emotion, I had a hard time to filter and to guide myself through to the next step. Baby steps really helped me. I'd go through walks, 10, 15 minutes, and I'd stare at a tree, just stare at it. People probably thought I was absolutely, but you know what? That's fine, because I did what I had to do. And if staring at a tree for 20 minutes, 30 minutes gets you to that peace where you need to be, it's not hurting anybody. I started to do things that weren't hurting not just anybody, but weren't hurting myself. They were actually helping myself. I didn't believe it was going to work. I did it because I was told for so long that that was the best thing to do for right now. So I tried it, and a lot of things didn't seem to click. And I got discouraged. And I figured, if this is what it means, go back to the table and try another one. And another one, and another one. I didn't know how long I was going to be able to do that. So I can tell you how important those numbers are in the context. I called almost every night some months. And that's okay. You do what you have to do to look after yourself. So upon getting outside a little bit more, opening up to people a little bit more, I started to see a piece of me come to life, just a piece. And what that piece was a piece inside of me. It was literally peace at heart, starting to form through all the pain and the trauma and the abuse. I was starting to feel again. It was probably the most profound moment in my life when I started to giggle and laugh at songs when nobody was around. I wasn't putting on a face anymore. I was just smiling for me. I learned very quickly growing up how to smile and nod and act like everything was okay. You stuck around long enough and you got to see the crack in the facade. What lied beneath was just a shell of who I was supposed to be. I slowly filled up that shell until it was a sturdy, strong, concrete mold to which I then could build from, and to say, this is what I was supposed to be. This is what I was meant to be. I'm still figuring pieces of myself out, and I probably will for the rest of my life. And I'm very much okay with that. Mental health and its journey is a lifelong journey. It's probably why it's very daunting, very much not tackled or talked about. Each journey is so unique and so individual that it's very hard to find someone with the exact situation, with the exact outcome. We are given filters, born and raised, different environments, different cultures, different lifestyles. There's bound to be conflict. But never, ever should you feel ashamed, humiliated, belittled, self-hatred. Those are boundaries that you set up, that I had to set up. It's a lot easier said than done. Those boundaries are still crossed sometimes. I'm not perfect, by far. I still have a lot of things I work on every single day, every minute if I could, but it's exhausting. So I make sure that I do stuff to bring me happiness now, even if it is forcing myself to put it in my phone and my calendar, reminders, even if I dismiss them, they're still mental reminders that I say, are we taking care of ourselves, Mitchell? Are we looking after ourselves, bud? And I don't do it meanly. That voice used to be so critical, used to be so harsh. I'd belittle myself before I'd let the therapist or the doctor or my friends or family get there. There was nothing left for them to pulp down. I'd already done a pretty good job at tenderizing myself. That kind of behavior, that kind of mental dialogue was one of the first things I noticed to change. When I started to say, yeah, you screwed up, but you're human. How are we gonna fix it? What are we gonna do? What does that look like? And I started to look forward instead of backwards, focusing on all the things that I did wrong, all the things that wronged me. To continue to give them power was not an option anymore. I was exhausted. I barely had enough power for me, let alone to dedicate to people who slept perfectly sound at night while I cried myself to sleep. That didn't seem okay anymore. So I finally started to explore what it meant to be me, what it meant to be gay, what it meant to be sexually explorative in my own means and my own preference at my request with consent. It was a pretty magical moment when you start to feel that self-confidence again. I still look back at myself and I say, we have come so far, Mitchell. Don't forget to praise yourself. It's not being hubris if you're stating the fact. You have come a long way. You've put in the work. Enjoy the work that you put in. Reap what you are putting in. So I started drag. And for myself, that was probably the best thing I could have done at the time. And looking back, I should have done it sooner. My expressive form of creativity was stifled. I was told I was too loud, quiet down. Now's not the time nor the place. And some may have been true, but for the majority, it was just them being uncomfortable with who I was. And why should I suffer any longer? I'm giving myself the power again. So I started to explore and to express and to gain that confidence once again. Of all places, on stage, with probably a pound of makeup, hair, wig, and heels. But hey, there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing. There's nothing wrong with what gets you there as long as it's not hurting yourself or others. You are perfect to explore your coping skills for you, your strategy. For me, a many array of things helped. Even candle gazing, to stare at a candle and watch the flame. I found myself being able to enjoy and reflect about how lucky I am to be alive, how grateful I was that I was able to be here, to use this platform, this drag platform, my public speaking platform. All of what I was ashamed of was now wearing badges of honor, where I'm now proud to say, I made it through conversion therapy. I'm still dealing with the effects of it, but the physical form of it. I'm making it through my depression. I'm making it through my anxiety. They're still a part of me, but they're not me. They don't define me. Whatever you are being associated to with, whatever you've been told or exploring, just know that that isn't all of you, and there's so much more to you. It's important to give respect to those situations. Nobody should ever be looked down or dismissed. Your voice deserves to be heard. And if you feel like you're not being heard in your circumstances, then please call some of the numbers that are in the chat, some of the educated individuals that are able to help or at least sympathetically listen. I know that might not be the be-all end-all, but baby steps. And I started there, and it helped me. And I certainly hope that it can help you as well. As we conclude my little journey, because it's just a piece. Just a piece. I have so much more to do. I have so much more to live. This is not by far the end of my journey. It's not the end of my book. It's just the end of a chapter. I reread some of those chapters that I've gone through. And I'm so proud to say now, I reread them and I see resiliency. I see strength. I see determination. So when I am able to gather and muster the energy to tackle whatever obstacle is now in my way, because there are going to be more, plenty more, I now have the reflective points to say, okay, I recognize this feeling, this stirring feeling inside of me. Always validate your emotions. Your emotions are real, they're pure. But it was the actions of my emotions sometimes that got me into even more of a painful situation, whether it's through anger outbursts or whether it's through painful experiences and triggering and then projection. I had to get to that point where I understood I can do this. I can apologize. That's fine. Some people don't accept it. But as well, sometimes I'm doing what I can do for me. And so I'd like to end it on a more profound statement, a huge light bulb moment, but oftentimes it's not that easy. So I certainly hope that anybody listening to this understands that these are just my personal experiences, and that's what helped me. I'm not an educated health professional. I just simply know what I've been through and the experiences of my human condition and what that means for me. And by sharing it, I hope that it can help explore a little piece of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mitchell, for sharing your journey with us. And I just want to express how grateful I am that you did everything you could to survive to make it to this point, to share it with everyone else. I truly appreciate everything you went through to get to this point.
Thank you.
Just so everybody knows, you can ask some questions in the Q&A. We can bring them to Mitchell. I do have a question myself for you, actually. So I know through myself and many others' mental health journey, there's so many false starts to trying to get that help. It's, I'll call tomorrow. I'll wait. It's the weekend. Nobody's going to be working. You put it off. You put it off. What was it that day that you decided you could reach out, that either gave you the strength or the desperation to do it? What was it for you?
That's a great way to put it. It's absolutely desperation. I got to the point where I just had enough. I had been having a rough month, as I recall, There was a few extra hurdles thrown my way, as we all face. And it just got to a point where I knew there was something wrong, and I was starting to get afraid for my life again. And having gone through that, when you're on that edge, you don't want to ever be there again if you're lucky enough to get away. Well, so stepping back gave me that perspective, and I felt that hand on my shoulder again, and it chilled me to the bones. And so I immediately asked my physician to look into immediate resources. And because of my circumstances being with UMB, I was given an opportunity. But if not, and you do find yourself being fallen through the cracks of the system, don't give up. You are worth it. You're worth the call. You're worth the call tomorrow. You're worth it next week. You're worth it the next week after that. So whenever that call happened, that's the beginning of the journey.
So you also discussed being a performer. And I can only assume, like with any other performer, that is a wonderful outlet to get things through. I assume, though, there was a lot of hurdles, particularly with your background, with everything in your other mental health issues, to join into a community like that, to become a performer like that. How did you discover for yourself that is where you wanted to go, and that is where you're going to be able to perform and feel?
Yeah, no, I had no idea what it meant to be gay, what it meant to be a part of the community, of any community other than religious. So let alone jumping into that kind of a pond was definitely a culture shock for me, 100%. I came to Fredericton bewildered and excited and explorative. And so I started to put myself in social circumstances and settings, small groups that I could handle, that allowed me to get a taste of certain different personalities, certain types of living, and certain types of expression. And there was a certain kind of expression that was shared at a local nightclub and local gay boom club, and I was just hooked. And I was always musically inclined. That was a huge outlet for me to take my fiddle and just play. And I figured that was never going to make money. I could never do that. So I had to go do other things. So I left that aside, but that was one of the biggest mistakes, because I happened to notice my mental health decreased. And when I left other things, and it decreased more. So bringing back the performance aspect, I could see that curve again. And we're just on a steady incline. And the more I perform, the more I express, the more I learn, the more I grow.
That's beautiful. We've got a few things pop up in the Q&A here. Stephanie Poirier just expressing her thank you and how inspiring you are. We do have another individual who is just yet again thanking you as well, demonstrating the mental health as a journey, and seeing a lot of similarities with your experience as their own, and really appreciating that. It looks like Susan Hines, you found information and strength from within. Did you find any inspiration in books or other resources outside of CMHA and other professional services?
Fantastic question. I'm not going to lie, there hasn't been much literature that I used as a huge Advent resource, other than when I became more familiar with the STEPS program. And so the STEPS program was a basically ongoing cognitive behavioral therapy group. And any form of literature that would support being able to understand and reevaluate your filters, to evaluate your expressions, and to really get down to the pit, that emotional trigger, whatever it is, whether it's excitement, happiness, anger. I started to focus on the pits of everything. It's the pits about it, honey, because when you figured out the pits of your happiness, then I could formulate more of those. I liked what I felt there on that day. Why? Was it because of what I did for myself, or was it who I was around? The positive people that I surrounded myself by, the positive experience that I was going through, whether it's through a walk, whether it was a bike ride, or just simply playing my music, or listening to a song, or just simply candle gazing. Little things. What was I doing that made that pit in my heart go, ooh? And the same thing on the other side. when I got that feeling. It was almost like a bitter taste, because I could sense something coming on, like an aura almost. And my whole body and mind and soul just kind of started to slump again. And I just noticed, what am I doing? Something came over me. And so having those literatures and those resources to point out those things to me and help me get those triggers. And the main thing was vocabulary, allowing myself to understand what I was experiencing and the verbal cues that I could now associate to, tangible. So it wasn't just mushing around in my head back and forth like a pinball. I had no idea what to do with it. If I grabbed it like a dog with a tire, I wouldn't know what to do with it. But now that I know what to do with it, with the help of the STEPS program, and as well to the program after that, it was probably definitely one of the best literature resources outside. Now it is still through, I believe, the Canadian Mental Health Association. There are no specific titles, though, unfortunately, that I have right off the top of my hand. Going through the nursing program definitely gave me a lot of resources through the clinical practice applications. So I got to say, I definitely drew from that. It wasn't that I just sat down and watched a candle for, 15 odd years and it got me through it. That was definitely some days out the candle wasn't enough, folks. So if you do find anything that specifically states filters, cognitive behavioral therapy analysis, those kinds of things, I think those would definitely be something to even bring up with your physician, with your clinician, or go to potentially a walk-in clinic and ask if there is an individual on site that is able to give any references they might have on site. Because I know that the gift of gab I'm blessed with. And so I sometimes would talk my way in and out of situations, good and bad. And so I just keep with talking to people, trying to figure out, asking people in the system, well, do you know? Well, do you know? Does anybody know? And then eventually somebody would say, okay, I might have something for you. It's not the best, but it's something. And it just gave me a little bit of momentum that I needed.
Thank you. We've got a few more comments for you that are wonderfully flattering. So let's get through. One of our people here, thank you, Mitchell, for sharing. You have triumphed choosing life over death, and that is the hardest point in life. I pray you maintain continued growth and strength going forward. Your story can help others who have had similar challenges. Your suffering will not be wasted. Grace has been with you to give you such courage, and your courage will touch others. To be able to love back through all your pain is a giant creative force within you. Healing will come as you heal others, and I wish you well.
Oh,
I know, right? I wish these were being read to me. Another one we have is thank you. You're gorgeous inside and out, and a big thank you for sharing.
I have to say, I have been always saying these things. It's being able to express it on this platform. Thank you to the Canadian Mental Health Association for having me on this. And thank you for everybody for listening. Please, I can't stress enough how important it is to share your experiences through humility and through dignity. Have dignity for yourself and respect for yourself. When you say those narratives to people, I had to watch how I worded it, because sometimes I would word myself so that I wouldn't get the victory. I would word myself as it could be open to interpretation. And I know exactly where I am. I know exactly what happened. And once I started to formulate that inner dialogue, it expressed its way inward, all the way to the outward, to the point where I was now exuding it, where people would express to them and they'd say, Mitch, I'm having a bad day. And I'd say, do you mind sharing? Or I might fill in the blanks, given the body language. And I would say, listen, I don't know what you're going through, but this is what I went through. And if there's anything that you can relate to, please let me know. I'd be happy to help. It's never comparison or a peeing contest. I know it is another word for it, but we won't do it. It's not about comparing each other's pain. It's like comparing marbles. I got a cat eye. Well, I got a galaxy. They're both marbles. And I'm going to lose my marbles the more we keep comparing, because everybody is different. Everyone is unique. They have that own special spark. So when I listen to people, I listen and I now respond with, I can't imagine what you must be feeling through that. Instead of saying, oh, well, jumpins, I used to do this, and oh, you should sit down and listen to my story. So when I started to share my story more, I got more feedback and more positive energy. Collect more flies with honey.
We have a few more. We've got another comment and question. Great one right off the hop. Love you. We also have another one. You are a hero in my book. My respect and love I feel towards you for loving yourself enough to go forward. I am a 70-year-old female living in an assisted living home and recently met a very dear person who is so you. He is an absolute sweetheart. He told me I was the first person he could look in the eyes and be himself. His story is so very, very close to your own. I can now better be a support for him because of you. I'm bipolar, and this has also helped me very much also.
That's fantastic. I'm so happy to hear these comments. Just, it makes, again, for anybody going through this, you're not alone. You're not alone. Okay? Whoever's watching, whoever's listening, we're going to get through this. That's beautiful. Thank you.
We don't seem to have any other more questions in the queue, but I do have one that I'm curious of.
Yeah.
All right. So everyone has the bad days. Mental health is a journey. It is not a quick fix. There is no end. On the days that are rough, what is that thing that always makes you smile, that helps you get that little bit through?
Oh, I know this one right off the bat.
I had a funny feeling you would.
I love comedy. Oh, you know what will make me, I will put on a 30-minute series just for laughs or something. Most of them I roll my eyes at. Sometimes I even get mad at them for their idiocy and their stupidity. Sometimes I'm even wondering how they got booked. But there is one joke, even just out of frustration, I just go, huh, huh, huh. And that might be it. But it breaks that dull. The only way I can describe it is numb, throbbing pain, where food, water, emotions, light itself seems to just be sucked into you. And it almost feels like the inside of you is just concaving in. That's when I start to notice my shoulders go. When I start to notice my arms kind of come in. I get quieter. I get grouchy. I get snippy. When I start to see those red flags pop up, I used to just drive right past them. People say, do you not notice those? What? No, not at all. I'm starting to now notice on the bad days by doing self-reflection, journaling, and a very long self-evaluation that is still ongoing. I've started to pick up and say, I know myself. That's not me. I know why, and I agree with why I'm angry, but the outcome of that, the action, that's not me. So again, validate those emotions. If someone makes you mad, get your goat, well, by jumpins. It's okay to be angry. It's good. Good to be angry. Anger fuels sometimes action. Sometimes anger is the fire you need to say, I have had it. I am done with this. I need to have something more than this. So when that moment comes, if it's through anger, if it's through exhaustion, if it's through depression, if it's through happiness, sometimes you get a taste of it and say, I do not want to let this go. Focus on those moments because they are impactful. They are the starting point of a very long journey, but one of the most rewarding journeys I've ever been on.
Wonderful and very well put. I just little comment. I find it a little funny. I'm a comedian myself, and I'm used to dealing with other comedians and things like that. And I find it just interesting that comedians who use comedy as an outlet, much like you yourself do, to talk about what they're going through and the problems that they're going through, that also can even bring you up a little bit. Just it's that quid pro quo sort of thing.
I love it. I know, and they often say sometimes the comedians are the most hurt, because it can be an oftentimes, as you know, in a performance style, when you give that vulnerability on stage, you put it all out there. It's out there. Once it's out there, she done. It's gone. It's out of your hand. And so I guess being more comfortable with slowing down, that was a big one for me, to stop and think. I'm still working on that very, very much. And it's probably going to be something I'll struggle with for the remainder of while I can speak, because I am that very energetic, pressured speech. Oh, shoot, should have said it. But I clarify why, I give context if appropriate, and I apologize if necessary, and then I move on. If it needs to be more done, if the severity of the situation calls for it, then I give it more attention. But I don't hound myself last week or the next week going, oh, remember that time when? I just say, yes, I do. And we're not going to do it again. And if we do, we're going to try better next time. And we're going to try not to do it again then. And I just keep that promise to myself, because the same promise can be made that I'm never going to make it. It's never going to happen. I'll never make it through. I'm always going to put my foot in my mouth. I am going to make it. I will always put my foot in my mouth, but it will always retract and go back to the ground, planted firm, where I can then stand my ground and keep walking.
Very well said. It's a lot easier to take your foot out of your mouth and put it back on the ground than it is to just swallow.
Well, she flings right out, right? Just
oh yeah, it comes out, and you know, it very rarely stays there long. I don't like the taste of it. We've got a few more questions. I recently lost my brother, and I'm struggling deeply. How do you reach out when your thoughts don't even make sense to tell someone what you need?
First off, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the pain you're going through. Losing a loved one is probably one of the hardest things that you might go through. If you don't even know how to articulate yourself, if everything just comes out, let it. Find someone who is just there to listen, let you cry, let you scream, let you laugh, let you just sit there and just stare at nothing and just be. Let it wash over you. Sometimes I just would find myself, my head bobbing back and forth because it felt so heavy with thoughts. And I would just sit there and stare and just come back to reality. If you can't find those individuals who are able to listen, when my father passed, I found it helpful for me to reflect on the good points that made them me and them connect, or made me laugh. Because often when I would think about them, I would laugh. I'd burst into tears instantly after. Expect that. But eventually it's just the laughter. And the tears slowly recede into enjoying the time we had, the memories. There was such a beautiful individual, gracious to be able to have that experience. It doesn't take away the fact that it's not fair. It's not fair. And I can't give you a magical answer or reasoning. And all I can do is just tell you that my heart is with you. And I hope that whatever you choose to do, that you know that even just crying and letting it out, you are going to feel tired and exhausted afterward. Try to get some water, rehydrate yourself, take care of the basics. And I found that I eventually had just enough energy one day that I would then go outside of the kitchen, down the hall. I take some more self-care days, nutrition, water, sunlight, fresh air. No social talking yet. And just build myself. You're going to go through a lot. You need that reservoir. You need that self-love tank. And it feels like someone just took a buckshot right to it, and there's thousands of holes through it. And every time you pour it in, it just filters. Eventually, slowly, every one of those holes will be filled. It's going to take some time, and each person feels them differently. Some days I stuck a piece of gum on it. Whatever works at that day to get you through. But I sincerely hope that you know that you're not alone, and I love you and thank you for sharing that. And I sincerely hope that you make it through.
I myself have recently lost my father as well, and I understand what it's like going through this. But one thing I would recommend is you don't need to know what you need to tell somebody to figure out what you need. What you do need to do, though, is reach out.
Yeah.
If you can't figure out what you need to try to help yourself, call one of the numbers that we have posted on the screen. Talk with a medical professional. You don't need to know what to say to them for help. They'll help you find it with you. There are people who are willing to go on this journey with you. So please do reach out if you feel overwhelmed. I know I had to, and they were able to help me find what I needed to be able to get through this. You're not alone. It's a journey that we all go on together.
Exactly. Fantastically put, Matt.
Thank you. We've got a few more. No, not a question. I wanted to say I've learned so much from you. You're an inspirational. Thank you so very much for sharing your journey today. Changing the world so much for the better.
Thank you.
And I do believe we have a return from the individual who lost their loved one. They just wanted to say thank you very much, and they truly, truly appreciate your kind words.
Of course, anytime. As we are here, and this is the whole series. This is a beautiful series. Hashtag get real with your mental health. You're not alone. It can sound a little brash, get real, but it's take action. You're worth it. Take that step, that baby step. Call that person on the helpline. Reach out to those individuals you feel safe and secure. That is a healthy relationship, not something that's going to belittle you. Or if you've had bad experiences with them before, then chances are maybe they're not the best to give that vulnerable side of you just yet. It doesn't mean that they're a bad person. It doesn't mean that they're not the right person. It just means that at that time, maybe having a healthcare professional, an educated individual with the right tools and resources and the wording to guide that vulnerable ship into harbor. Sometimes we get there, but I know I could have used a few extra helping hands versus a few lost shipmates. So.
Very, very well put. It looks like we've got no other questions here tonight. So thank you very much, Mitchell, for joining us and sharing your journey with us and answering all these questions for everyone. This concludes tonight's mental health speaker series. Please join us tomorrow night as we will have celebrated comedian, author, and mental health advocate Jessica Holmes share her story. The link is in the chat to register, or you can check out the Canadian Mental Health Association of New Brunswick's Facebook page to register. And please, if you are experiencing any form of mental health issue, distress, you just need someone to talk to, please, in the chat, you'll find the numbers you can reach out to. If you don't want to reach out to them, reach out to a friend, reach out to anyone. Please don't try to go through this alone, because everyone is here to help you. We all want to see you to succeed. So thank you very much for joining us. Please have a lovely evening. Try to stay happy, healthy, safe out there. And I look forward to you joining us again.